good afternoon and welcome back to Malaysia Tech Month 2020. I'm your host Brian this afternoon, and to kick off the second half, I would like to call upon Mr. Gopi Ganesalingam, Vice President of Global Growth Acceleration of MDEC, to deliver the welcome note. Over to you, Gopi.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Gopi, the Vice President of Global Growth Acceleration at MDEC, and it gives me great pleasure to welcome all of you to Reinventing Malaysia's Digital Economy, the kickoff event to Malaysia Tech Month 2020, or as we call it, MTM 2020 for short. As the agency tasked to lead Malaysia's digital economy forward, we have paved the way for the nation to thrive in the incoming era, Fourth Industrial Revolution, or 4IR era, by fostering digitally powered talent, forging digitally powered businesses, and fueling digital sector investments. We at MDEC believe that Malaysia is primed to be positioned as the heart of digital ASEAN, an exemplary nation that will thrive through its future-ready workforce, border-spanning innovations, and investor-friendly environment. This year, going digital has been a mantra for many entrepreneurs and businesses. The words resilient and pivoting take first spot. Amid the gloomy economy caused by the COVID-19 pandemic, there's emerged a tinge of hope as pockets of affected individuals and businesses have begun discovering new ways to stay afloat by leveraging on the power of technology. While this pandemic has undoubtedly pushed many entrepreneurs into uncharted territories, it has also opened new doors for scores of tech innovators and entrepreneurs that are quick to strike while the iron is still hot to capture these new opportunities. At this unprecedented tipping point, the weak will retreat and withdraw from the game. However, a true entrepreneur will soldier on in either good and turbulent times, fighting with sheer determination to meet current demands and create new opportunities to match the new norm. Ladies and gentlemen, MTM 2020 aims to celebrate these extraordinary efforts and recognize the challenging journey that our Malaysian entrepreneurs and businesses have had to take along the way. MTM 2020 is a month-long curation of the best digital technology content enabled by over 70 visionary and courageous leaders and showcasing the nation's world-class tech and digital innovation. So over the next couple of days, you will be able to hear from the brightest minds of the digital and tech sectors, locally, regionally, and globally. So friends of the tech industry, we are honored to have with us here today the presence of industry leaders such as Amir Anwar, CSO of Aerodyne, the world's #2 drone tech player, Joel Tay, CEO of SoftSpace, a leading fintech player in ASEAN with over 20 financial institutions in 10 countries adopting its payment solutions. Stephanie Sid, co-founder Imagine Group, the parent company of one of the world's top stock image sites, 123RF. Patrick Grove, co-founder and group CEO of Catcher Group, which has birthed many successful startups such as iFlix, iCar, and iProperty. And last but definitely not least, Joel Nyo, the founder of Fave, Southeast Asia's merchant super app. So ladies and gentlemen, we encourage you to connect with these remarkable chieftains and take part in the discussions that will be happening today while uncovering what it takes to build a global business in the new norm with the challenges that lie ahead. We also hope you would understand and discover what needs to be done to make Malaysia the pulse of ASEAN digital transformation. Join us in these invigorating series of discussions that you will find reinforces Malaysia's position as the first mover of the digital economy, and to discover how tech can be used as a social equalizer to drive shared prosperity for all Malaysians. Thank you and have a very good 2 days at MTM 2020.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gopi. Now, we shall proceed with the second panel session of the day, The Road to Global Dominance. But before that, just a little reminder to all of you to take advantage of this virtual event and network digitally with your fellow participants. Now, coming up now, moderating this session will be Loh Hui Siong, Chief Executive Officer of Vision Animation Malaysia. Now, he will be introducing our speakers for the session.
Hello. If I'm on, hello everybody, and welcome to all of our panelists and also our audience. I understand that there are over 300 people who are logged on, and that's an amazing number of people. Today, I'm going to try to have our panelists tell us a story about how they really earn the success that they're enjoying currently. And I'm going to try to get it told as a story with a beginning, a middle, and an end. Okay. So first, the panelists. We have Amir Zakwan Anwar from Aerodyne, Joel Tay from SoftSpace, and of course Stephanie Sid from Imagine. Each of these companies have amazing stories to tell, but I'm going to let these people tell their own stories. And so I'm going to give each of you a couple of minutes to give us a little bit of background on yourself and your company. Let's go ladies first and start with Stephanie.
Hello, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Sam, for the introduction. Yes, this is Stephanie here. I'm the co-founder of Imagine. Imagine is a homegrown bootstrap company founded in year 2000 with the idea from Andy, the founder. He was working in a similar business in the UK as a financial controller. Knowing the limited content of what it was called the East Meet West photos, right? We started to working on our own production video shoot, photo shoot, setting up our own website with a basic search, and slowly became one of the world's largest stock photos library in the world. How did we do that? Number one, we were one of the early Google AdWords adopters in year 2002. That was how we expanded globally when clients from overseas managed to search our site and started ordering from us. Then slowly we realized that our clients that time also demand for more options for stock photos. Hence, we managed to sign up as a distributor of Getty Images and Corbis, two of the largest royalty-free stock content player back then. We became everything under one roof, a one-stop solution for our customers. With 20 years of experience, we have evolved into a software as a service model, combining our creative content with editing tool. So we have actually made an acquisition of Pixlr from Autodesk in year 2017. We are building a creative ecosystem, leveraging on three guiding principles: technological innovation, creativity, and entrepreneurship. We want to have our customer to be able to enjoy a complete creative journey. It's faster, smarter, and easier for small and large businesses to be able to tell their marketing and advertising story. Even for people like you and I or our audience, right? We want to empower everyone to become a content creator. For businesses which do not have the large budget, they can rely on our product offerings to get their marketing or advertising stories done. Backed by 350 Imagineers with presence in 44 countries, we are serving about 35 million users a month across three main e-commerce platforms, namely 123RF, Pixlr, and Designs.ai. We remain profitable, and we believe that by staying focused on our goals, we'll be able to build great product that has a social impact and forging a future where design is within reach for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. Perfectly timed. So we're going to come back to this. That's an amazing story already in and of itself. And I'm going to touch on some of those beginnings and how they relate to where your success is today. But before we do that, I'd like now to invite Amir from Aerodyne to come and tell us a little bit about his story and that of Aerodyne.
Sure.
Amir,
thank you,
go ahead.
Xiong. Thank you, Xiong. Thank you very much for having me here. So if I could summarize what Aerodyne does in a nutshell, it's really 2 letters and 1 number, which is DT3. So DT, the first DT being drone technology, the second DT being data technology, and the third DT being digital transformation. We started from humble beginnings, but now we've already covered 35 countries globally in a span of 6 years. Just for the audience information, today is the 6th birthday of Aerodyne. And in 6 short years, we are already the second in terms of drone services ranking of globally, and the road to number one is very clear for us, and we feel that we can reach this within the next 1 year or so. So that's where we are today. Thank you.
Congratulations. Happy birthday.
Thank you.
That was short and sweet. So, Joel, it's your turn to tell us about SoftSpace.
Thanks, Hui Xiong. Hi, everyone. I'm Joel from SoftSpace. SoftSpace is a fintech player in operating mostly out of Asia Pacific, headquartered here in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. We are an 8-year-old fintech company, and we started about 8 years ago in 2012, whereby we started with the MPOS technology, mobile point of sale technology, and we were the second company in the world to be providing a centralized EMV processing for card payments. So it started because there was a need for lower cost card acceptance devices, and it started because we wanted to disrupt the card payments market. So not being contented with number 2, back then in 2012, we were the second centralized EMV payment company in the world. We started growing our footprint. We started, ironically, first from Thailand before we brought the technology back to Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. And then we expanded across Southeast Asia, Indonesia, Philippines, Vietnam, Singapore. And very recently, we started embarking on a new product, which is a pin on glass for mobile card acceptance. So you're able to key in your PIN code for your credit card or debit card transactions on an Android device or an iOS device. And we did that back in 2018, and we became the world's first in 2019 to be certified with that payment technology. And we also became the world's first to be processing card payments, contactless card payments on mobile devices with the PIN acceptance technology. So I think 8 years later, in 2020, today we are in more than 24 different financial institutions across 12 different payment markets. And the latest market being the ones that our investor brought us together in Japan. And we're also focusing in Europe right now. So that's a short story about SoftSpace.
Thank you. Now, so what we have here are a collection of different businesses in different industry verticals. They all share and also have differences. In the case of Amir and Aerodyne and Joel in SoftSpace, these are reasonably young companies. They're 6 years old and 8 years old. Stephanie's journey with her husband actually has been one that's taken them 20 years. But all of them have arrived at a point where they have achieved significant footprints, globally. Okay, I'm a little bit reticent to use the word dominance, but really these companies are in fact dominant in their space. Now, we've just looked at what their origins are. In the 8 years, in the 6 years, in the 20 years that it's taken them to get to where they are, I'd now like to explore what have been the factors of that success. Those will include both internal resources, external resources, of course, funding, and of course, technology, which is inherent in all of the three businesses. But before we go and explore funding and resource, I'd like for us to maybe start also at where each of you or your founders were when you started that business. Today, you are somewhere between 300 and 400 people. But when you were 2 people, when you were 3 people, what was that vision? Was that vision something that you have now realized today? Or what you saw then is very different to what you see now? That is something, in fact, I think will be useful in contextualizing growth. We'll start now. I think, Joel, we'll start with you because actually you touched on this.
Okay. I think when we started about 8 years ago, we envisioned a major disruption in the payment industry. We envisioned bringing down the cost of card payments acceptance to be, at a fraction of what it was back then in 8 years ago. And I think the vision and mission remains the same. I think we have gone through many cycles and we've come back to the same original vision. So when we started back in 2012, we introduced a payment dongle to be linked together with a mobile phone. And along the way, as we penetrate through markets and disrupt certain markets and bring the technology across Asia Pacific, of course, Asia Pacific then became the leader in payments technology and payments regulation, and they started introducing PIN-based transaction, and that kind of derailed us slightly because with the introduction of PIN-based transaction, the devices got more expensive. The cost of rolling out got more expensive, and we had to re-educate merchants and set new payment behaviors, so that became more expensive overall. But we did not give up. We continue on our path and on our original journey to make payments very, very low cost and acceptable. And today we arrive at where we were 8 years ago, staying true to our mission. We are able to accept payments with a very cheap payment dongle device, or you can accept payments just purely by using your Android mobile phone with nothing else. I think I think if you make comparison from where we started, we came one full circle, and we are still on the same mission where we are today. We expanded our service offering. We became a card issuer. We embark on online payments, e-commerce payments. We are a e-money provider ourselves, but the mission remains the same: to make payments accessible throughout Asia Pacific, and now expanding to Europe and the Americas. The mission remains the same: to expand payment and to penetrate through markets, and to evangelize low cost and effective payments.
Great, thank you for that. So what I'm hearing is that there was a vision. It had to be modified by market forces. And the environment and the situation or the circumstance. But ultimately, you have stayed true to your vision and your mission, and that's helped to steer the course. Okay. Now, I'd like to move on then to Amir and Aerodyne, because I think your story is different to the extent that when drones came into being, it created a whole new market. So for both you and Stephanie, as you answer this question, I'd like for you also to think about how that vision that you had, or in Amir's case, Kamarul had, who's the founder of Aerodyne, in addressing that space, and also the markets that you were addressing, because clearly there is no innovation unless you're addressing needs. So Amir, over to you.
Sure, thanks, Yong. So the use of drones in for commercial use is only like 8 years ago, and the use of drones for industrial use has been around for 6 years. And Aerodyne was at the right place at the right time when it was founded in 2014. And the purpose of Aerodyne is really to make sure that we use drones for everything. So we want to use drones for inspection, making lives easier for us people. And there was a real, and there is still a real need to use this to solve real pain points. And we started off with asset management, so talking about critical infrastructure. And these are industries which are usually managed manually using manual labor. So, you can imagine very costly, very dangerous. So you imagine, a power plant, for example, sending people up, into nuclear power plants. This is a no-man zone. It should be a no-man zone. And it just makes sense to use drones to gather data and really deliver real insights to whoever the asset owner is. So, the thesis of how Aerodyne was born is really to solve that problem. And as we went from one year to the next, from one client to the other, we realized that, hey, there's actually more problem statements that we need to solve within different verticals, right? So we started off with critical infrastructure. Now we're in security, we're in agriculture, we're in other spaces as well. So, this is something that we are continuously enhancing, refining along the way. But the premise was very simple. This was something which was an activity which was dangerous. It was costly. It was not very insightful because you're really using, naked eye inspections. But right now we're automating everything. We're creating data platforms to make sure that we deliver real insights to the asset owners. So, from that was really, our standpoint from where we came from.
Thank you. And for the benefit of our listeners and viewers and audience out there, I interviewed Kamarul prior to this. Number one, we should congratulate him on being appointed. And the reason why he's not here is today he's chairing, I think, the first meeting of the IR 4.0 panel or council that has just been convened. So he sends his regrets, but he also wanted me to tell you that part of his vision or his reason for starting the business was that he was actually driven by being insulted, by people in general, the marketplace, especially in this country, of people not really seeing the potential or the quality of the services that Malaysian companies can provide. And so he was driven by that to say, okay, I'm going to prove all of you wrong. I'm actually going to build a company and a set of services that are going to be world class. So that was part of his drive. It's also a combination of his personal passions. He has a finance background and actually worked for an audit firm. Is a nerd and a geek at heart. So he combined his interest in finance, entrepreneurship, and technology and aeronautics in a drone company. So that's a little bit more background. I hope that sort of also helps contextualize what drives entrepreneurs, which then brings us to Stephanie and her husband, who started, 123RF.
Yeah, I think for our case, I have to bring everyone back to 20 years ago. The idea was actually very simple, to address the market needs, where we think that there is a need for the East meet West kind of content. What does it mean? Because that time, all the pictures that we see in the market are all Caucasian faces. So there is a lacking of Asian faces on that aspect. So that's what we decided to do. And along the line, as we started Imagine and then moved over to 123RF in year 2005, it's purely because I would say that it's the market, the client, and the technology that put us to push our boundaries. With the digital camera evolved during those days, right? There are more and more digital images and supply all over the place. It pushes the price for one picture from a few thousand ringgit to, or I would say few hundred US$ to $10 that time. So we jumped into the game because we do not want to lost our market share. So we actually did that. And in fact, our revenue triple, right? After we have actually launched 123RF after so many years. And but then we understand our conversation with customers kind of like boxed up, very limited, because we are just talking about content and content all over again. But we ask ourselves, what are the things, excuse me, that's required? Excuse me. We started sorry, excuse me. So we started to ask ourselves, what are the things that would make our conversation interesting and customers see us add values? Then we talk about the editing tool. So that's the part where we actually took a very bold decision to make acquisition that has completely changed our position today in the industry.
Thank you. Okay, and so I'm really glad you said that, because now we're talking about the growth story. But before we move on to those factors of success, what I've just heard is that in the case of Stephanie, she started from 20 years ago to address a set of domestic needs, an Asian need for stock library images that were Asian rather than Caucasian. Now remember, even today, the industry is dominated by the likes of Corbis or Getty Images. And so she grew from that base to address that specific need. And that was a professional need, like you said, with very high fees, to a much broader base of users who are paying $10 as opposed to thousands of dollars, and yet increase their revenues. Now that's a huge story. But there's also the reason for growth, and the catalyst of growth was the acquisition of Pixlr. So we'll come back to that. In the case of Joel and SoftSpace, it was about addressing the need to reduce the cost of payments, or at least that was their ambition. And they have achieved that in many, many ways over the short space of time. In a market, or in several markets, especially in Asia, that have seen technology allow economies, whole economies, leapfrog. For example, in China, which was completely underserved in as far as banking and credit cards were concerned, into today what is the world's leading cashless society. And in the case of Amir and Kamaru with drone technology, they haven't even had to. Today, they're the #2 drone services company in the world, but they do not make any hardware. And yet, when we talk about drones, all we have in our minds are those things with the 4 propellers, or if they're fixed wing, UAVs. But in fact, that hasn't been the reason for their success. So let's move on then for what has then led to that growth. Yeah. Now, in talking about growth, I think first and foremost, we've got to talk about the internal resources. What is it that we brought to bear that, kept us on that road? Even if it's 6 years or it's 8 years or it's 20 years, it's a tough journey. So what did you guys have in your quivers, okay, that allowed you to stay the course? So let's start with you this time, Amir.
So in 2014, when Aerodyne was started, it was 3 people really running the show. From 3 people, we have grown to 400 plus globally. And this company really, in terms of internal resources, it's really been self-funded. We were in the funding game a bit late, really because the company has been profitable and generating cash flows for growth. But then again, the internal cash flows, with the accelerated growth trajectory that we had aspirations for, internal cash flows would not be sufficient. Hence why we decided to, raise external funding. But to your point about internal resources, all the tech that we've built are homegrown. We've built our technology base in Malaysia. However, right now, since we are at this scale, it can no longer just be in Malaysia. The core technology component still remains in Malaysia. However, there are development centers that we've built overseas, like India and other places, really to supplement the building of our technology. But the core still remains in Malaysia. So that's really, in terms of internal resources, that's where we really are. So the core technology gets built in Malaysia. The thinking, and you're right to point out that we don't build any hardware. We build software platforms, that assist us in doing what we do in terms of solutioning drone-based solutions. But really, the core is in Malaysia, and which means that the hiring, the brainstorming, the value add is all in Malaysia. And that's how we evolved from 3 people. We started hiring. We grew to 400. But it's not without its own challenges. Every time, at every juncture of evolution of Aerodyne, it was really because we stumbled upon a huge problem. It's like, when you play a game, you meet a boss. And when you meet a boss after you finish the battle, you actually level up. And that's what really happened to us. You know, we had encountered issues after issues after issues in the past, but every time we solved those issues, we really leveled up to the next level. But I think I'll stop there and I'll pass to, Stephanie, and Joel would have other stories to share as well.
Thank you. And I do want to come back and explore that point about pushing boundaries and being stretched beyond your comfort zone. So now let's go to Joel, because I do know that in soft space, your internal resources are very important. It's something that you want to talk about.
Yeah, I think for us, the winning factor and the fact that we are able to scale the way that we did and we are still currently doing is because we have a core set of group members that and a management team that we are very comfortable with, that I am very comfortable with. First of all, I think in this management team that I have a very diverse skill set, but very importantly, it's a very harmonious team, and we all see a very unified vision and the same vision together. So I think that is very, very important because prior to this year, we travel more than 100 or 150 days a year, last year, not this year. So when you're away from office and when you are busy expanding the business globally, you need to make sure that at the same time your house is in order. It's not burning when you're overseas making deals, and when you come back, there's no more soft space office anymore. So it's very, very important to have a set of management team, a group of core people that will be able to tag team with you to take care of the home base, to make sure everything is running, and this sort of trust. Again, I'm very, I think soft space is the only one that mentioned a lot of luck involved, but I'm very blessed because this group of people, although we have not been working as long as what Stephanie has been with her husband, but the level of trust that we have built over this short period of time is incredible. The level of understanding, and it's just gotten to a point whereby whenever I wanted to answer something, somebody answered it on my behalf and with the exact same thought and tone that I would have answered it. So I think that played a great deal in preventing the management team from burning out, and it really gives you the ability to scale, and you have a set, or I have a set of trusted team members that have been with the company since day one, and they are still here, believing in the same mission and vision, and it's really important to have this core group of people that is harmonious to move forward.
Thank you, Joel. So now we're beginning to explore, the space that a lot of management gurus, have been expounding in their books, in their lectures, in their tours, about teamwork, about unified vision, and how everyone gets behind a strategy, and also how actually really coherent teams can actually replace one another. Exactly as you said, you can step in when somebody's needed. Any one of that management team can actually step in to fill that void, and to that extent it also means that there is nobody who is indispensable. And when you reach that point where your organization starts to take on a very healthy life of its own in that manner, you're well on your way, at least from an administrative or management perspective, to much better days. Now, Stephanie, from that perspective, in terms of your core team, you talked about creativity as being a very important, aspect of that, or and in that sense, I'd like for you to maybe explore a little bit with us how that, as an internal resource, influenced the manner in which your company grew.
Okay. I think one of the core values within our group is actually challenge your limit. So by saying that, is always to take on tasks and projects that we never tried before. and encourage each and everyone and be supportive to each and everyone to try it out. And at the same time, throughout the journey of trying, right? So we also encourage creative thinking, or how are we able to make things, different, out of the box kind of approach, right? So that we don't do the same thing like what others are doing. This is very important. Like what Joel has mentioned, our team also quite matured. Most of the, especially the senior management team members, most of them has been with the company for more than 15 years, right? So they know the basic requirement of how to run the business with or without MD or myself around. So that's one of the thinking, right, that we actually push through everyone, to have that mindset when we do our business or when we run our day-to-day operation. So that's very important. And other internal resources, I would say that because the business itself is quite generating quite healthy cash flow, right? So it allows us to invest back into the development or research of the new product, right? When we say keep going, keep chasing, right? Well, everybody would think it's very easy to say, but it's not easy to do, right? So you still need to have certain sustainable amount of cash flow that you will be able to invest back into what you need to do to improve the product and the areas around it, right? So that's very important to me.
Thank you. And yes, we'll come back to this issue of cash flow and funding, and how that keeps the wheels turning. What I've really heard is actually in each of these companies, the management style has actually encouraged collaboration. All right, you've allowed your managers, your senior team, to rise, and you've given them sufficient free rein to be who they are or who they need to be, either as individuals or as the people who hold those particular positions. Now, I understand, for example, from Amir from Kamaru, that even today he continues to have daily huddles. All right, and that's really important in terms of ensuring that communications, cascade through the organization, and also that you don't get bogged down from one person trying to run 400, because that's impossible. So now, rather than spend time talking about that, because that gets into the realm of hierarchies and management structures, which we don't have time for, we only have another 10 or 15 minutes, I'd like for us actually to let me touch on some of the personal traits that are important as leaders that have allowed you guys to expand your businesses, and also how you've expanded the business. So this time, I'll start with Amir in terms of how you and your management team have worked with Kamaru, and I understand that it's by way of partnerships, or rather M&As, that has actually been your growth story.
Yep. Yeah, that's absolutely right. So whenever we enter into a new country, we never do it alone. We'll always have or identify local partners to partner with us, basically to take up market share in a new place. And we spend quite a fair bit of time doing due diligence on who the right partner is. And because at the end of the day, these are your eyes and ears on the ground, boots on the ground to execute your vision. So because of that, we make sure that we have the right partner, and for countries that we already have sort of a foothold in, and to deepen that foothold in those countries, we actually take a position of acquiring the top player in that market. So, for example, in April, we announced an acquisition of the top Middle Eastern drone services company called Falcon Eye Drones. And this really solidified our position in the Middle East. However, we're not like any other VC investor. We are strategic partners. So at the end of the day, our role is really to help the partner on the ground grow the business. So whenever they grow, we grow, and that's really the premise behind it. 1 + 1 not necessarily equals 2. It might equal 3, 4, 5, whatever. And at the end of the day, we intend to inject synergies and etc. for us to grow. And this has been the modus operandi for all the countries that we've entered. And M&A not really serves the purpose of market access. It also serves the purpose of acquiring new technology that we can add to our arsenal. But at the same time, it also serves the purpose of acquiring leadership. As we grow, that's a very important point, that we need quality leadership to help us govern all the different nodes that we have globally. So M&A is also used as a tool to acquire some of these leadership capabilities, not just technical and also managerial capabilities, but also in terms of thought leadership on how we collectively can refine and enhance the business to future-proof ourselves.
And congratulations on that, because it tells me that there are two very powerful things at work here in the case of Aerodyne. Number one, it's enlightenment, okay? It's enlightened thinking.
Thank you.
That, unlike a lot of entrepreneurs who think of themselves as being the only way or the only reason for growth, Aerodyne has gone about it understanding and actually celebrating the fact that key partnerships are essential to growth. That is a very forward-thinking approach, and it has clearly stood you well. Now, just one question. You've done this by way of M&A, but it hasn't been by way of acquisitions through cash, correct? It's by way of really establishing partnerships and sharing the spoils of growth, correct?
Yeah, so we there are two modes of it. So sometimes we do non-equity partnerships, but at the same time we also do equity partnerships where we actually take equity positions in some of these companies, depending on the region, whether regulation allows foreign investors to take significant positions, etc. It will depend on a country by country basis. Yeah.
All right, thank you for that. But that also means there's one thing that perhaps is underplayed, is the ability to communicate your vision. Because without being able to communicate your vision to a potential partner, especially if that partner is already dominant in their own local market, then how on earth are you going to get them on your side? Because number one is always the hardest person to deal with or to convince. So again, that speaks very highly of your ability or Kamarul's ability to communicate and to convince. All right. So now let's come back to Stephanie, your turn now, because I understand that JVs have also been important in your growth.
Yes, I would like to mention that communication is definitely a key, because especially in those markets like it's not English speaking market, for example, Germany, Korea, Japan, right? So these are the places where we rely on someone to have that experts who know how to navigate the market to help us to build our product and market share and revenue. So communication is very important. Then I think the next thing is about trust. But how do we do it? Is actually to set up a very clear goal, targets, right? And we establish very easy and clean policy, and each party understand the corporate governance part of it, right? They have theirs and we have ours, and we meet, right, the criteria of both. Then yes, then it is potential to have this partnership, whether it's in the form of JV or resellers or distributor. But yes, I do agree that to communicate what we want to do together and how we're able to achieve that goals together, it's very important.
Thank you. So soft skills are also very important. Now that brings us to Joel, and how, in fact, in your case, in the case of SoftSpace, yes, you do have partners on the ground, but I think the catalyst for that growth was actually initially early investor funding, VC funding, and a strategic investor in the form of Sumitomo Mitsui Card Company. And maybe you want to tell us a little bit about how a giant like that was important and how that helped catalyze your growth.
Yeah, I think in SoftSpace case, strategic investors have played a very crucial role in our growth. I think more than just accepting funds for growth, we wanted to make sure that the partners that or the investors that we accept into the company actually contributes to the revenue growth, to opening new markets, contribute to our understanding of new payment technologies, and especially in the cultures from one market to another. So we like Aerodyne, we do due diligence, and we do it on our investors to make sure that they are really the party that can help us expand where we really want to, where like what Stephanie said, there are markets that are very close to English speakers. So it was crucial for us to have investors that support us. So for example, in Japan, the SMCC has played an incredible role in trying to bring us to merchants, to give us insights on merchants, to give us insights on the society, the trends, and what's happening on the ground. And I think on top of strategic investors, we have partners like, for example, our partner in Thailand, who also help us understand markets. So I think in SoftSpace case, it was a mixture of strategic investors and good partners in places where we do not understand their culture. They came in very handy in helping us to penetrate the market.
Thank you for that. Now we're quickly running out of time. It's now 3:45, and I think we're hitting or pushing the boundaries of time now. So I'd like for us now to go around and conclude. Especially in terms of where you guys have been successful and in raising the funding, or in how acquisitions have been important. Now let's talk about, given where you are the founders now looking at exits? Or is it your intention to continue to run that business? And if it is an exit, is it temporary? And what form is it going to take? Is it going to take a form of an IPO or a trade sale? And perhaps I think Stephanie has some news to share with us on that front. So I'll start with her.
Thank you, sir. I would say that yes, we are exploring, but on our side, it's not just about the funds that we are going to get, right? And more importantly, it's about partners who can really bring value to the business, and together we bring this business forward. We need to have a shared vision, like what Joel has said as well, right? A unified vision. So for any partners who come on board, whether in the forms of VC or whatever, right? I think it has to have a shared vision of what we want to do together and how we want to bring this business forward. Yeah. So yes, we are at the stage of exploring. We are not denying it. Yes.
She's still keeping things very close to her chest. But yes, she's more than hinted at an exit. But what I'm hearing also is that their passion for the business and their love for this baby that is now 20 years old, needs to be continue to be nurtured. And therefore, whoever they bring on will still have to share that vision. And that's a thread that runs throughout this story about shared visions. So let's now go to Aerodyne, and what are your ambitions in that case?
So as I mentioned earlier, I think we want to be the top player in this field. We are very close to that. We're number 2 this year, and the road to number 1 is very, very clear for us. And since you mentioned about Stephanie being very coy about certain plans, for us, we are our aspiration is to eventually list which market we don't know yet. We're exploring all markets, but our ambition, at least it's not an end. It's a one of the many milestones that we are aspiring to be. Is we want to be the first Malaysian unicorn, right? And to us, being number 2 in the world, and we're ever expanding, I think that is something that is quite attainable for us within the next few years. So that's really where we are looking forward to.
I'm so happy to hear that, because there was an earlier panel about why Malaysia and not Singapore, talking about unicorns. Yeah, so yeah, I'm going to hold you to that. I think the rest of the Malaysians out there will as well. Joel, what's the story in the case of soft space?
I think everyone aspires to, at one point or another, to become a unicorn in their respective fields. For soft space, I think in general the team is looking at, there are many possibilities. IPO is one of them, but more importantly, because we have investors that comprises of strategic investor. So one of the possible exit would be to become part of the investor, to merge into and become a body and part of the investor, because I think that in that way we already have someone who understands what we do very well, see everything in alignment, and I think for the management team, most importantly is the future of all those who actually work for soft space. The direction and where we see that they are most comfortable with. So we exit, and when we have an exit plan, we have in mind the people that is within the company right now, and what would be best for everyone.
Thank you. Thank you. And I think that really closes things out really well. I hope all of you on the panel, as well as everyone in the audience, has really enjoyed the sort of unraveling of that story as told through the eyes of these three wonderful people. And I have to say, I only just met them when I got roped into being the moderator for this. And over the course of the past few days, I have had amazing conversations with them, which I really would like to continue. And I'm sure actually our audience would actually like to hear more about their stories, because we've really only scratched the surface. There are so many more things that I'm sure that we can talk about, from internal resources and soft skills, to leadership and management teams, to the trials and tribulations of cultural differences. And, as Malaysians dealing with global markets, there are issues that come up. So there is so much more to talk about. But today, I hope that, we have, between the few of us, told a story, with that beginning, that middle, and that end in terms, and then they certainly sound like happy endings to me. At this point, then I'd like to check into the chat to see if there are any questions, and I actually don't see any questions that have been posted by the audience into the app. So at this point, I think it's 52 anyway. So I think I'm going to sign off. I want to thank all of our wonderful panelists for having given of their time and of themselves. And I hope all of you out there who are listening in have gotten something out of it. I certainly have. And I've promised all of them that we'll be getting together again. And I hope to see all of you out there as well. And thank you to MDEC, thank you DNA, thank you to everyone who's been a part of the organization of Malaysia Tech Month. For now, goodbye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you for an energizing and inspiring session to Seong and the three other panelists. That certainly gave us quite a few things to think about. Some of the things that I sort of am taking away are and are inspired by is really about the focus on customer needs and solving problems. Also, the thing about collaboration. All seem to have very strong management teams that work together. And thirdly, the need to level up as you evolve through your journey as a company to become world-class companies. We will now be moving forward to our next session, and it will begin shortly. And the title of that is Face Off, Why Malaysia or Singapore to Build Your Companies. Click join session, please, and I look forward to seeing you then.